What up, everybody? Here we go. Today I'm going to talk about why the d20 is basic, why the 2d6 from Apocalypse World has some issues, but also going to talk about my solution to the dice rolling problem. It's not really a problem, I just think there's better methods out there. Alright, so to begin with, the d20 is very swingy. Depending on the game, you either auto hit on a 20, auto miss, or auto succeed, whatever. On a 20, auto miss on a 1, and then there's some difficulty between 10 and 30 or whatever it is. And you roll your skill against it, and you see the difficulty, and you go, alright, I did the thing, and now I'm done. The Pathfinder 2 does do this a little differently. It's if you succeed by 5 or more, you crit. If you fail by 5 or more, you fumble, and then there's success and fail if you're within 5. That's fine, but it's starting to get a little bit more mathy. And my philosophy, now, I'm not afraid of math. I like math, but my philosophy is the math should be happening during game design. Here, the math should not be happening at the table. Avoid math at the table. That's one thing I gotta say that WotC did right when they picked up Dungeons and Dragons originally, is they went from the kind of swingy, Thaco, everything kind of up in the air, like 8 million different systems or 8 million different things. They're like, all right, we're going to do all the systems the same. We're going to base it off the attack. But instead of doing Thaco minus armor class equals what you have to roll over on a d20 to hit the person, then you do this and the other thing. Instead of that, they just went, all right, you know what? Add attack bonus. Armor class is now a positive thing. That's your difficulty. That was a much better design than the original D&D design, but that's also from the 1970s, where no one had done this before. So, like, you know, cut Gygax and Arneson some slack. All right, like, it's the first time anyone's ever like tried this. Like, it's or that I know of. If you know of aside from Bronstein, which was Arneson, I think. If you know of an earlier RPG than D&D or Bronstein, let me know in the comments, but I don't think there was one. Bronstein he ran like twice, and apparently the second campaign was bad, which goes into game design and how people overcomplicate their campaigns. Alright, so the d20 is swingy. What do I mean by that? Well, get myself a little Jupyter notebook here. Yeah, that's right. I have a Jupyter notebook. I look over this way to see what's going on with YouTube, but there is a delay, so I need to keep that delay in mind when I'm doing this, so that's fun. Alright. So first we have the averages here, d20, 2d6, etc. Ignore the L's and the 3d6s for now, because that's going to be a thing. And let's see here. So here we have probability curve for d20. Can you see that? Let me go in on this a little bit more here. There we go. I think that's visible now. So the probability curve for d20, I can see if it's visible. Yeah, it's okay. Maybe a little bit further in. Whoa. A little too much there, Darren. All right. Apparently they're just not very visible. I apologize for that. But anyway, you see it around 0.05, which is 5%. I didn't bother translating this to percentages. Sorry. If you're not getting that, then I apologize. Is pretty much the standard for each die, and to get at least that number, it goes straight up. Linear. It's a very linear system, right? Except I think it's actually to get at most that number. Yeah, it's at most that number. Wow, I failed at life here. I apologize for that. Let me, well, here, I'm going to rerun these numbers anyway. Wow, I failed at life. Nah, that's a lot of numbers. So it's at most, that number. Okay, sorry. At most. So I'll just change this one. Now, name error. Oh my god. All right, yeah, I got to rerun everything if I want to rerun this. All right. I haven't run this recently. Just did the thing. Okay. Sure. But the important thing to note here is that the d20 is very basic, very linear. You're equally likely to get a 1 as you are a 20. if you've ever tried to map real life skills, so let's see. When I was younger, I was a level 1 NAA archery instructor at a summer camp, and I had a lot of time on my hands. And I was a physics grad student at the time, and I had computers with me, and I had Excel documents, and I was like, I wonder what my dexterity is in D&D. And the way that I went to figure it out was I approximated what the AC of my archery target at the range that I was shooting at with the bow I was using would be, and then I just said, hey, did I hit, did I miss, like how close to the middle did I get? And I had like values for each AC based off of, where it was in the feet of target. And yeah, geeky as hell, stupid, not really a good idea to do. But one thing that I did get out of that is the fact that my targeting, my skill level, however I defined it, and however I translated that, didn't look like somebody rolling a d20 and applying that. It looked like more of a Gaussian curve, which is what you expect because of the law of large numbers. So the d20 is a little bit basic, even with and making it less basic just means more math. All right. So what do we do instead? Well, let's see here. So at most for the 2d6, yeah. But as you see, this curve here, the first curve, this curve here is the more important one, I think. Anyway, so that's the curve that we should be looking at. That goes up and then down. It's a very triangular curve. Not quite Gaussian, but it does center you around, 7 to 9, right? The mean is 7, I believe. The mean I got was 6.998, yeah, 7. The mean should be 7. I, only did a few things. Now, Dungeon World uses 2d6. But the difference between Dungeon World and the thing that I don't love about Dungeon World in this regard is that it doesn't have a DC. Instead, it says if you roll 2 to 6, you fail. 7, 8, 9, you succeed at a price. 10 or higher, you succeed. So we'll call that similar to like Pathfinder. We have like good success, mild success, failure. They don't have critical failure, but they have critical or better success, mild success. And it's usually succeed at a price. So what I mean by that is, for example, their main combat skill is called Hack and Slash. Then when you run up to a monster to hack and slash, you roll 2d6 plus your strength modifier, which their strength modifiers are based off of the older D&D ones, where it's, 12 to 15s plus 1, 16, 17s plus 2, 18s plus 3. That reminds me of the black box of the dragon going, right? So yeah, that has its own thing. Oh, right, hack and slash. Really losing my train of thought here. I had a weird week. So when you hack and slash on a 10 plus, you hit the opponent. On a 2 through 6, you miss the opponent, or 6 or less, you miss the opponent, and you get hit by the opponent. So you take damage, you don't do damage. On a 7 to 9, you damage them and they damage you. So you trade damage. And then again, on a 10 plus, you can either damage them or you can do more damage. I think you roll an extra d6 of damage or something. I don't quite remember. I could look it up, but I'm lazy. But you take damage. So it kind of plays out in an interesting way, but there's really no difficulty based on what you're fighting, right? That your chances of hitting a goblin are the same as your chances of hitting a dragon, except that the DM shouldn't let you hack and slash against a dragon unless you're using a ballista or some other large thing, because a dragon is too big for you to harm with your sword. That's a whole other story and a whole other thing, but that's kind of how they get away with the quote-unquote 16 hit point dragon. 16 hit points. But that's because in Dungeon World, if you're a fighter, you do a d10 damage, no matter what your weapon you're using. So when you shoot that dragon with a ballista, you roll a d10. That's why it has 16 hit points. So it can survive a hit or two from things like ballista. Not the point. The point is, this is good in that it kind of concentrates a little bit more like reality looks like, but at the same time doesn't quite do the Gaussian. And that is why I am going to show you this. Boom. This is 3d6. That looks almost like a Gaussian. It's pretty close to Gaussian. And adding more complications and more dice is not going to make that much better, right? This is sort of the number of things to add versus getting a Gaussian trade-off. 3d6 is where you want to be. So 3d6, the average is 10.5, which puts it roughly where D&D is used to, so you could use this to replace like the D&D d20 roll or something similar to the Dungeon World 2d6 roll. However, with the Dungeon World 2d6 roll, 7 to 9 is their kind of sweet spot. The sweet spot here would be 10 to 13. 10 to 13 is the sweet spot. So if it's single digit, you whiff. Less than 13, but double digits, hit at a price. 14 plus, you're golden. But, as I alluded to before, and as I'm going to say again, the problem with Dungeon World is that it doesn't matter what you're fighting. The difficulty isn't there. Except, does it? Because monsters in Dungeon World have hit points, just like in D&D. And what is a hit point but a difficulty rating, right? I can damage this opponent this much, and now I have to hit it again to do this. There was actually an OSR game, I don't remember which one, but that uses a similar thing where it's like, there's like a difficulty pool that things have. Basically, like, a lock has hit points, and when you pick the lock, you damage the lock's hit points until you click through it. It uses a hit point mechanic to simulate difficulty and how much time things take. Kind of like this. So what I'm thinking of doing, and this is kind of just like a fun thing, and I don't have a document up. That's fun. So what I'm thinking of doing is this. You're going to roll 3d6 and add your ability modifier, kind of like Dungeon World, but with an extra d6. I'm probably going to use the 5e-esque 3.0 ability modifier as the, half ability score minus 5 equal... Or half ability score round down minus 5 is your ability modifier. That's the, plus 1 for 12 and 13, plus 2 at 14, plus 3 at 16, plus 4 at 18, plus 5 at 20 that you guys are used to, and that everyone's used to from D&D, because it kind of scales up a little bit. And again, my average scaled from 7 to 10, so scaling it up a little bit is roughly equivalent, and it's something that you're more used to. So you'd roll 3d6, add that ability modifier, and again, if you get a 10 or less, something happens. Okay. I'll just keep going. If you roll less than 10, if you roll 10 to 13, middle ground, 14 plus, good times. I have to remember that you can't see this hand, and I'm not left-handed. So I can't snap my left hand. What is that? Anyway, here's where it's going to get interesting. So for my rolling method, actually, I'm going to go up a little bit and show you some averages because there's something I told you to ignore earlier, and I'm going to talk about it now. I then looked at, when you roll a d20, you generate one number. One number. Just one. It's whatever you roll in that d20, right? I roll this guy, gets one number, whatever the sides are. You roll 2d6, you generate 3 numbers. You add them together, you also have a lower die and a higher die. So when I roll 2d6, my average is 7, the average for my low die is 2.5, and the average for my high die is 4.5. So that's 3 numbers generated with one roll. If you roll 3d6, you generate something like 7 numbers, right? You get all 3 together, average is 10.5. The lowest one is 2. The middle is 3.5, and the high is basically 5. You could also say, hey, low plus middle is 5.5. Low plus high is 7. Middle plus high is 8.5. Add them all together, we're back to the 10.5. So that's a bunch of different numbers that we can generate with one roll. So this is my idea. Whenever there's something that you have to accomplish, we'll have rolls similar to moves in Dungeon World. We'll have set up like what kind of rolls we will typically be making in a game and how to educate them. When you make a roll, like let's say we have what I'm going to call trade blows, because hack and slash I'm changing the name to trade blows because I want to emphasize that you're trading blows with somebody. Because every time you roll in a role-playing game, there should be a consequence and there should be a goal. If you don't have both a consequence and a goal, why are you picking up the dice? Like, why are you making the player roll if there's no consequence? Why are you making the player roll if they're not trying to accomplish something? So for this system, there's always going to be a consequence and a goal, and then you roll. And when you get, and in my game, you get to pick from a list. If you get a 10 to 13, you pick one thing from the list. If you get 14 plus, you get 2, or if it's your character's wheelhouse, like fighting as a fighter, casting a spell as a wizard, that kind of thing, you get to pick 3. This is similar to I actually got this idea from Dungeon World, because some of their things, like discern realities, is their perception check. And their discern realities is you get to ask one question from the list if you get a 7 to 9, and you get to ask 3 questions from the list on a 10 plus. So I was thinking of that, and I was like, that's kind of cool. And the list will, generally speaking, depending on the list and your character's avoid the consequence, or avoid the consequence, apply some number towards the goal, depending on what the difficulty of the goal is. And there might be a difficulty for the consequence as well, so you would apply blank towards the consequence. So for example, with trade blows, right? Consequence, you get hit by the opponent. Your opponent's attack lands. Goal, you hit the opponent. Roll. If you get in the middle, you can either choose to not get hit or choose to strike them but accept the consequence, which in that case would be however much damage that creature does. And when you choose to strike the opponent, you'd be able to roll some amount of damage. I haven't decided what yet, but some amount of damage. What I'm leaning towards right now, and this is why I'm doing this as a live stream, even though there's nobody watching right now, which is sad, but there it is. What I'm leaning towards right now is when I roll, when you perform a skill that involves an ability score, you roll L, but that shifts up based off your ability score. So for example, if you have a +1, then you would roll M. If you have a +2, you would roll H, highest, right? If you have a +3, you would roll L plus H. If you have a +4, you would roll M plus H. If you have a +5, you would roll LMH. Thinking maybe changing that up a little bit, not 100% sure on that, because I don't know if I want players being able to roll like the entire die as that. But that's the idea. And so you get to apply that number towards the success or the failure. For combat, it would be simple. Let's say you got a strength 16. That's +3? +3? I think it's +3. +3. In D&D, it's +3. So that would be, let's see, L, so M, H, LM, or LH. So I'd roll 3d6. If I got a dead average roll, L would be 2, H would be 5. I did 7 damage to the opponent. And when you roll, also, you get to apply either L, M, or H against the damage that you're receiving based off what armor you're wearing. So light armor would be low, medium armor would be medium, heavy armor would be high. And shields would provide options, like if you have cover, you might be able to avoid the consequence entirely if you have cover, but if not, you just get to apply X towards it or something, and then that would be, like, shields would just allow you to completely dodge the attack. and also dodging. If you choose to dodge the attack as well. But if you have cover, you can get behind it. Shield is just portable cover that you carry with you. So that's the idea. 3d6. Compared to that, if it's double digits, you're doing something. If it's 14 or higher, you're doing great. And you pick again, basically to accept the consequence, to negate the consequence, and to achieve the goal. But there'll be other things to choose as well, because achieving the goal might only do like some amount of damage. Like, let's say it does M damage, but maybe there's a thing that you have where it's like, but I'm holding the weapon in two hands. I can add this to the damage. There's the other things you could. The other ideas, if you have things to pick from, I'm using the trade blows on purpose because I don't have any actual moves yet, but that's kind of the idea that I have. Like, maybe knock your opponent down, apply some sort of condition to your opponent, disarm your opponent. These could be choices that either come with the skill, or as you level up, you gain abilities that say, hey, when you succeed on a trade blows, it'll give you some conditions. Like, if you would damage your opponent, you may also knock the opponent prone. So as long as you chose to damage them, you can knock them prone. So if you only get the two choices, you're doing that, but you're taking damage. If you get three choices, because it's in your wheelhouse, you could avoid the damage, damage them, and knock them prone, because you get to pick three things. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this. And yeah, D20 is basic. And I think it's time for a better rolling method. And this is what I got. Let me know what you think.